Check, 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 check. All right, sweet.
Live, and my mic is now also officially live.
All right, sweet, man.
Gotta transition over to this. I should probably make sure this loops. Or this is not the first time that I've done this. Okay, cool. It's set to loop, I believe.
All right, sweet.
Oh, don't transition to that. Transition to there we go. Make sure this loops. Or this is not the first time that I've done this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna give us a little intro here. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian, and welcome back to Bob's Basement. This week in the basement, we're going to be accompanied by none other than the very esteemed Dan from Star Wars Transmissions, formerly of Dan's on Fans, Dan's on Fandom.
Dan's on Fandoms.
Boom! I swear, like this is. I'm good at this. I'm gonna make sure. Why is this thing not looping? Oh my god! From Star Wars.
You love it when you need things to work.
Yeah, for real.
Never happens.
Dan's on. I'm actually just gonna like delete this really quick.
Dan's on Fandoms.
Boom! I swear, like this is. Gonna make sure this guy loops. I'm good at this. We're getting there, people. This is our trial run of the new pod. Here, just want to make sure that we have something to look at, like when someone's watching this back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Boom. It's funny because I work in video production as like a regular job, so it's like I should be better at this. You know what I mean?
Happens to the best of us.
There we go. Thank you for giving me that. Okay, I'm like positive this one's gonna loop now. I think. I think. Okay, let me watch it really quick and make sure. All right, I think we're good. All right,
people. Sweet, nice.
All right, bring it back around. So my name is Brian from Bob's Basement. This week we're accompanied by Dan from Star Wars Transmissions, and we're gonna talk a little bit about. We talked before over Discord. This is like kind of like our introduction to one another, where we just like kind of chit chatted, and we talked for like an hour and a half about Star Wars Visions, and I was like, maybe we should
got into it, man.
We definitely got into it. I was like, we should save a little bit of this for the podcast. But yeah, so what I figured we could do today is, I know that we're probably a little bit late to the party of people talking about Star Wars Visions, but whatever, who cares? We had talked about it a little bit before, but I figured for those who don't know, we could dive into some of our favorite episodes, some of the areas that we thought like it kind of lacked in. And there's also, like we were talking before the podcast started, was like the influence that Star Wars Visions had on potentially some of like the Disney Plus stuff going forward. And some of my hopes and dreams, personally, as like a Legends fan, and this is like something that I had learned from you when we first started talking on Discord, was that you got into the expanding universe with Disney's purchase, which is like interesting because I feel like most people who I talk to that are into Star Wars lore or either like OG fans, people who were like into Legends, or people who are at least like Wikipedia browsers. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
People who like at least were like just like randomly going through and like getting interested by like little bibs and bobs. So that was like one of the things that I was like I was even telling my fiance about it. I was like, so Dan never read Legend stuff. And she was like, "Is that weird?" And I was like, "You have to know this is weird. We've been dating for like so long. You have to know at this point." But yeah, so I figured let's jump into Star Wars Visions and give me like your top 3 episodes.
Ooh. And so, so this was kind of hard. I've been working on a video where I'm going to do my episode rankings. So it was hard to come up with number 2 and 3, just because there was 4 that I was like, all right, these are clearly my favorite. And then
Mm,
trying to organize from 2, 3, and 4, I kept flip flopping them. Number 1 was for sure easy for me. So my 3 favorite were The Ninth Jedi, The Village Bride, and The Duel. And it's funny because when I sat through this on Wednesday and watched The Duel for the first time, I don't know why. I don't want to say it disappointed. It definitely didn't. I just what I went into Visions thinking like The Duel was gonna blow me away.
mm.
And first time through, I was kind of like, all right, that was awesome. But I was expecting more. Then I went back and I've watched it like 3 or 4 times now. I'm like, that episode is absolutely incredible. I was straight tripping the first time I sat through it. It is so goddamn good. So
All right, that
I
was
would say
awesome.
my
But
top 3, number 1 would be The Ninth Jedi, number 2 is The Duel, and number 3 would be The Village Bride. I thought that maybe number 3 would be The Elder, because that episode is also really, really great.
Mm.
But The Village Bride, just I feel like the story is amazing, the art is amazing, the music in that episode is like hypnotic, and I just love how it ended, and I love the character F in that episode as well. So
I
yeah,
feel like the let me think here. Like that episode is probably one of the ones that could slide in the easiest with either canon, like Legends, or story group canon is like kind of what I call
yeah,
it. Um, I think that like that one would slide in like the best. Like even the Elder, I think that that one would slide in pretty well as well.
yep,
So the Elder was like probably in my top 3. I still struggle like to say which 3 would be like in my top 3 favorites. But the Duel was definitely like I think they did a really good job of like showing that one first because
mhm,
it like really kind of preps you for like the weirdness of Star Wars Visions because it's so stylistically it's so different from anything we've ever seen.
yep,
Like even outside of like the Clone Wars multimedia project and like I'm sure like you're probably familiar with like the 2D animated like Clone Wars
mhm.
stuff that had come out like long before.
Yeah, what's that guy's last name, or the guy that created it? I can
I
never
keep wanting to
remember
say
his last name.
Arstotzky, but I know
It's
that's not
something,
it.
yes, and I think it's something with a T, but yeah, yes.
Tarkovsky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that
that's
sounds
it.
right. So, I think it just like it does like a really good job of prepping you for like this is definitely anime, and like I'm not normally someone who consumes like a ton of anime like content in general. I like kind of like the traditional like go tos for most people, like Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist, or like Attack on Titan or whatever.
Mhm.
Those are like my usual like my palette for like what I can kind of watch for anime or whatever. Obviously, I'm gonna give Star Wars like more leeway because I'm a huge Star Wars weeb. So, um, the Duel, like you were saying, like I guess I didn't really realize that they were making a book for that character, and B that he actually is a Sith. So that was like something that like I was a little bit confused on when I was watching it, which I kind of chalked it up to oh, it's an anime Star Wars show. So it's just who cares if he's got a red lightsaber and he's not a Sith. You know what I mean? Um, so I'm curious to see which one of these would like be continued in a potential like Star Wars Vision season 2 or whatever.
Yeah, and I think The Duel is a story. I mean, the book comes out in like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks or whatever,
Mhm.
and I think that that is easily a story that can continue on even beyond a book. The Elder, I think The Elder absolutely could. I agree with you. The Village Bride, 100% could. Oh my God, man, I would absolutely love if we got a continuation of The Ninth Jedi. I think that that would be awesome. I feel like those are definitely the ones I could see being um, a little bit easier to continue. And now that I say that, actually, maybe even Tatooine Rhapsody, I guess you could continue on fairly easily because it takes place after Order 66 and it's a Jedi on the run in hiding. So I guess you could continue that story on as well. But yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm so excited to read that Ronin novel. And I think part of the reason why I initially was like, that was cool, but wasn't like, it didn't initially blow me away. I think part of
Mhm.
it too was I didn't realize, like we were talking about, that Ronin is actually a Sith. Um, and I think too, just initially, I was a little the fact that they had lightsaber sheaths kind of threw me for a
Yeah.
loop first time through.
'Cause it's like, are
And
those made out
now,
of Beskar? Like, what's that made
yeah,
out of that's working?
and and now each time I've watched it since, I'm like, man, that is so awesome. And like the scene where the Sith bandit leader, um, she goes to like hit him with his lightsaber. He uses the force to stop it, and then at one he finally like ignites his lightsaber, and it comes out super slow. Is so goddamn dope. So
The stylization of the episode is like chef's kiss. It's top
yeah,
notch.
it's amazing, and like I would highly recommend if you have not or anyone has not watched the behind the scenes, like the extras for each of the episodes, to do that,
Oh, I still haven't
especially
done that yet.
for the duel, because that's where I learned that he is actually a Sith, the Ronin. Um, and I love that they were talking about, and you could totally see this in the style of the short, and just really the music. I feel like it's done very well, but it's an homage to like old samurai films, old Kurosawa films. So yeah, I feel like they really knocked it out of the park. I think, was it Kamikaze Doga is the name of the studio? I think it was Kamikaze Doga that did that one.
I have to
Um,
look up like what else they've done because I wonder if that's like a departure stylistically from the things that they've animated before. I'm not like I said, I'm not like even huge on anime, so I'm not sure. Oh,
I
we have a message here from Austin. He says, "Should any of them be continued, or should they just live in that single episode?" So
that's such a great question, because damn, like it would be awesome to get these stories, a continuation of these stories, but at the same time, especially the ones that I like thought were incredible, having those just live in those episodes and not seeing a continuation of them would be kind of badass. Like I don't know if you're a fan of Watchmen or if you've seen the HBO series, but
absolutely, like I'm a fan of all things Watchmen.
uh,
I was an original graphic novel boy, like who like
same.
that's like one of the first graphic novels that I was like ever really introduced to.
Same, man.
That
And
TV
like
show is top notch. It's so
it's
good.
so good, and it's like I remember when it came out, everyone saying they wanted a sequel. And on one hand, I think a sequel would be cool, but that's a show where it's like it ended perfectly from start to finish. It told an
Exactly.
excellent story. It doesn't need to continue. So there's a part of me that's like, man, some of these stories, they don't necessarily need to continue. It would be, I don't necessarily think that Lucasfilm has to, but I do think it would be fun for a continuation of some of these characters and these stories.
And some of them like really lend themselves. Like I can sense, like especially in that Ronin one, I feel like maybe that one, like they already had a feeling that they were going to continue some form of story of them, even if it's just like in book form. And that was the other thing I was like shocked to find out is like A, it's going to be a book, and B, it's like a regular size book. Like it's a full
Yeah.
length story, which
Yeah.
I like did not. When you said, "Oh, they're gonna make it into a novel or whatever," I was thinking, it's gonna be like a YA novel or something like that, something nice and simple. But I think that and Ninth Jedi, I feel like really lends itself to like potentially be followed up on. Uh, and the the Bride one, I feel like that one, it just feels like a continuation of like potentially even like the Clone Wars. So it feels like
Yep.
it maybe already is a continuation of a continuation. I definitely feel like some of them are good to just like sit and stew in that moment. Like we had talked before, like Tatooine Rhapsody or whatever. I feel like that episode maybe could have been more impactful if there were like I'm not super familiar with like rock operas or anything like that, but I feel like there wasn't that much rock opera in it for it to be considered a rock opera. Like if there had been like maybe a 40-minute runtime and the whole thing was a musical, like every single second of it,
Yeah.
not just like small sections of it, I feel like that would have been I would have been able to get down with that more. I'm not even usually a
Yeah.
musical guy, but like if you're gonna commit to like that genre, like really commit to it, like go all out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we had talked about this, but that was the one when I saw um the list of the episodes um before the season started. That was the one I'm like, I'm not gonna like this because I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of musicals at all. And it surprised me. I actually thought it was pretty enjoyable. It was one of my least favorite. I should also preface this by saying I liked all of them. There was some that I liked more than others, but
Mhm.
I for the most part I liked something in each of the episodes. And Tatooine Rhapsody, I definitely enjoyed it way more than I expected. I
Yeah.
do agree. I think it's, if there was a 45-minute runtime, 55-minute runtime, having more time to do more songs would probably bode well for that story. But I do think that that would be a story that could very easily continue on, um, just because of the fact that it takes place after Order 66.
Yeah.
There, Boba Fett was there. Jabba the Hutt is on Tatooine, so that's a story that could very easily continue. I was thinking about this after our conversation. Like, I find it odd that, and this is totally me like speculating here. There's no basis for this at all, other than me just like thinking about this. I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm was using this season almost as like a litmus test to decide how they want to maybe continue some of these stories,
Mm.
or if they do want to continue some of these stories, because of the fact that they released all those episodes at once. Um, and
Which they
that's
did not do with The Mandalorian or The Bad
Yeah,
Batch or anything.
yeah. I was fully expecting that it was going to be like every week there was going to be a new episode each week. So I don't know. I totally like speculating here. This is just me like thinking probably way too much into this shit. But um, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm was using this as like a litmus test to say, all right, what sort of stories do people like? What could we use to maybe pull into canon, or what sort of characters can we pull into the canon? Um, and I think that uh there's some seriously awesome characters and stories that they can pull into canon that I would be all about.
And I'm still like really curious. So like my big takeaway, like as like a Legends fan, is they have been like ramping up some more like Legends stuff in general. Like they're doing like that like essential Legends collection or whatever,
Yeah.
which coincidentally enough, like before you and I started streaming, I was telling you that we had gone to the comic book shop and we also like went down to our local bookstore and I got all of the copies of the Essential Legends collections that are out right now. So like
So which stories dropped? I know that the Bane, the first one, Path of Destruction. Was it
so
Path of Destruction was the first one?
Rule of Two, which is the second Bane book, that one came out. All three of the original Thrawn run, that's all out. Shatterpoint, I believe. So I have like phase one and phase two of all of the Essential Legends collection, like book covers or whatever. I already own most of those books, like in other mediums or whatever. But so I think that like with the like they're pushing some of like that legend stuff, like they're showing some non-canon stuff. I think there's like a non-zero chance that there's a potential that we could get to see some animated versions of legend stories, which is
Oh
like
yeah.
that's I think that that's a good way to kind of mash both of the sides of the fandom together, like people who, because there are legitimately a lot of people who just never followed any of the Disney stuff, like none of the story
Mhm.
group stuff. They haven't like read a single Marvel, Star Wars comic. They like Tad Larkin is like one of my YouTube friends, and he's like a big Legends guy. Like has not seen any of the new Star Wars movies. Hasn't
Which
seen
is a
any.
shame.
I
And
mean,
I
because
could
like there is some
totally
good stuff in there.
understand someone's someone being upset about legend stuff being labeled as legends.
Mm.
Because even though like I didn't start out reading Legend stuff, I wound up going back and some of the Legends, especially the novels, some of them are absolutely fantastic. But to your point, I do think that Disney and Lucasfilm, they know that there is a segment of the fandom that is not happy with how things have gone down.
Yep.
So I would not be surprised if what you're saying is true, that they are, and Disney Plus makes like this possibility all the more likely that they could start to bring characters or stories from Legends, even if it's in a cartoon format, um,
And I feel like,
and
and
make
that
it
would
more
even like
palatable.
give. So I think that was like one of the hardline issues with Disney buying Star Wars was that Luke and Leia and Han, those are those characters. Like they're like hard those characters. So like maybe bringing them into like an animated format where it's like here's a Visions version of like New Jedi Order or something, and it's like a 2 episode arc of like the Yuuzhan Vong War or something. I feel like that would give people like more. They would give it more leeway to be like if there's like story inaccuracies or if their story changes from like what like the New Jedi Order like originally was. That they'll give that more leeway to be like, okay, let's. I mean, it's animated, fine, who cares? I think that they've like done a really good job at like we were talking about before, is even the episodes of Star Wars Visions that I did not particularly care for, like I wasn't like upset that I didn't love them. I was like, okay, whatever. Like it's the episode was 15 minutes long. Who cares? Like Tatooine Rhapsody wasn't necessarily my bag. I mean, it's not like it like robbed me of a $15 movie ticket and like spending 3 hours in a packed movie theater. Like I just watched it in bed. You know what I mean? So I think
Hmm.
they've done a really good job at like leveraging it to the point where even if they do like a Vision season 2 and all of the stories are completely different, like they don't follow up on any of the stories, which I think is unlikely. I think that it's gonna be like the same experience now that people had this season. Like it's people are like I'm here for it. I'm here for like the anime Star Wars or whatever. And even if I don't like a couple of the episodes, it's not like the end of the world. So
Yeah.
I think that Disney. I feel like there's a lot of people who like think there's like some big Disney aversion to Legend stuff. Like they don't want to like dive into that stuff, but they're doing reprints. They've like commissioned artwork for all these new book covers. I really do think there's like a good chance that I might get an anime version of like New Jedi Order or like Legacy or something. At least like I'm holding out hope for that.
And dude, I would be all about that. And to go back to what I was mentioning with the extras, in one of the, I think it's like the behind the scenes of the actual season, it was mentioned that this series started, the production for it started 3 years ago.
Oh damn.
So yeah, which I was kind of surprised by it. At the same time, I was like, I'm kind of not. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm is already working on other stuff or other stories or continuing some of these stories. Um, and I think especially in Visions, that could be an excellent place to start to bring some of those Legends characters and Legends stories um, back, which I think would be so much fun. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, like we were saying, like it'd be like a really good way to. I mean, if like you're a Legends fan and you haven't watched any of the Disney stuff at all, and like they make some version of a story that like we all know and love, I feel like you'd be like really cheating yourself, like not to at least check it out for like a little bit, like
Hmm.
just to see what it's
Yeah.
like. But that Ronin book, so do they say like where in timeline that's supposed to take place? Like even on like the back of like the book cover or something?
I'm not sure. I saw today on Twitter that someone mentioned that the Sith bandit leader, and this could totally be wrong, but that she will get more information about her backstory, more information about Ronan's backstory. But I haven't seen anything about a mentioning of when this story will take place.
'Cause that would be like pretty big for me if like they do give it like a hard like date. And it's like when would the scale be like BBY like battle before Battle of Yavin or whatever if it's like in Star Wars Visions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like what would be the time scale?
The
And
only thing that I can go off of, or that I could only use to guess is that the bandits were wearing um, Imperial stormtrooper armor, as well as First Order
Yeah.
trooper armor. So that's the only thing to give us some idea of when it would be. If that's the case, it would have to be after or during um, when the sequel trilogy takes place. But I have no clue.
That's like the other thing is like if this like does like take place like in like an alternate universe of like post the First Order or whatever, or the Final Order, if you will, keeping to like the episode 9 canon or whatever. I wonder if they would be maybe not willing to mention some of like the sequel trilogy characters. Like, what if like in the next Star Wars Vision season, like Ronin does take place like 10 years after episode 9 and they like reference Rey or Finn or something like that? Because I feel like we have not gotten a ton of stuff with those characters after the sequel trilogy, or even during the sequel trilogy. Really, like there's there's some comics that like have those characters in them, but I'm like really wondering if they have something built up for those characters already that they're like getting ready to start to dive into, or if they'll like be bold enough to be like, okay, like, well, here's like an alternate version of Rey. Like,
Yeah,
what if like in season 2 of Visions, Rey was the master of like that Sith bandit?
that would be so cool.
That's like the shit that I think that they could like really make some people really big fans of this stuff with.
Dude, and now that you say that, I'm trying to think what comics and books have come out. The only thing, and I don't even know the date that it was off the top of my head when it was released, but like the only thing I could think of most recently, comic wise, for um, something sequel trilogy related is the Rise of Kylo Ren, and I don't know if that came out. I can't remember if that came out before the Rise of Skywalker. I feel like it
It was
came
definitely
out
before the Rise of
after.
Skywalker. I feel like here, I'll Google it really quick.
But
We
yeah,
have internet
you
machines.
bring up a good point, man. I don't think there's been really much. The only other thing I could think of was the like around last Christmas, the like the Life Day um like Legos special. The Christmas special.
Hmm.
Other than that, there really has not been much story wise with
When did
Ray and
episode
Sequel
9 come
Trilogy.
out? Again, was it January 2020?
Was it 2019? Was it
God,
December
it may have been.
2019?
Look, these last like years have been
A blur,
a
man.
blur. Rise of Skywalker related 2019. Holy
It
shit, that
was December
feels
2019.
yeah, December 20. So Rise of Kylo Ren definitely came out afterwards. You were right, but for some reason I could have sworn it was before. But yeah, but whatever.
I think
So
because I think it came out like January or February right after. Because the reason why I think I recall that is because that's when I started the YouTube channel
mhm.
and I started making videos. Like the first video that I made was about the first issue of the Rise of Kylo Ren. And yeah, and the
Still a
YouTube channel
solid
is
comic
one of
book
them
run.
2 years old.
Still a solid comic book run.
Yeah,
One of my
absolutely.
favorites of the new Disney stuff. But I feel like it would be super sweet because like like we see like Sith Rey in episode 9, like dark vision of Rey from a potential future or whatever. Like, why not give us that? You know what I mean? Like if that Ronin character, God, now I'm like all hyped on like this like potential like fan story I'm writing in my own head. Like if that Ronin book, if it like covered like a potential like Sith Rey and like she was like their dark side master or whatever. That's some shit that I could get down with for sure.
That's the beauty of Visions, man. It's basically like it could be Lucasfilm's version of Marvel's What If. You just make stories that could have a ton of different um ton of different characters doing things that we might not see in canon, and I think that's awesome.
I mean, because that's like we could potentially see a Luke in like a Jedi Order that would have actually like maintained past before episode 7 or whatever. Like there's lots of room for Ari to work with there. And I think that with this first season, obviously they didn't touch like any canon characters. And I'm wondering if that is by their own choice or if that's like by decree of Disney because they want to do something else with those characters like before Visions gets to touch them, or if these studios just made the choice. We're not going to do any canon characters. This is all going to be
Yeah.
brand new, off the cuff characters.
That's a good question. I'm so torn, man. Like I go back and forth on whether I want new Star Wars stories to feature some legacy characters or if I want them to be strictly brand new characters. If you would have asked me that question before the season finale of the second season of The Mandalorian, I would have 100% said, "Oh, new characters all day every day." But
Mhm.
then the season finale of Mandalorian like totally changed my mind on that. So I man, that's a really good question. I don't know. I feel like if I were a one of the creators or one of those studios, I would be like, I want to create a story with brand new characters that don't have any ties to certain stories or films or whatever.
It gives you a lot more room to like to move around with.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, man, but I could also see Lucasfilm saying, "Hey, we, try to just focus on different characters and try not to touch on legacy characters." I'm not sure, but
So and like I'm wondering like also which one of these Star Wars Visions episodes could like slot into like something from the High Republic.
oh, the Elder for sure.
Yeah, or like the
100%.
Ninth Jedi, I feel like one of the things that like really limits it, like in terms of like it being able to be like slotted into something, is kyber crystals changing color based on like force alignment. I thought that was like cool for like the twist of like uh that one Sith not actually being a real Sith or like a double agent for Jedi or whatever. I think that's like the one like restraint that they put like on that being kind of slotted into one of those time periods. But
Are
the
you talking about the one character that like was their lightsaber turned from red to purple?
yeah,
Yeah.
that was like a pretty interesting twist. I thought that like they just like randomly one of those Sith lords was actually like a secret Jedi.
So the way I thought it was that they were like completely they were super influenced by the dark side or the malevolence of those other characters,
Mm.
and that kind of like turned them, which I don't think can recall a story where that happened. I thought that was kind of cool where like, hey, I guess this character was a Jedi Padawan or something, and they just kind of got like sucked into the malevolent forces of these other characters and just kind of like went with it. I like the idea of lightsabers and kyber crystals changing based upon the wielder, especially because that's something that's talked about in canon is that kyber crystals are living things. Um,
That's like
I
sort of like the most depressing part of the new canon for me is like kyber crystals like need to be like forced to bleed to turn them
I
red. I'm
so
like, God, that is so brutal. That is just so
I love
upsetting.
that because if and you could correct me if this is incorrect, but I could have sworn that in Legends, where like the Sith used like manufactured
Yeah,
kyber crystals, right? So I think
yeah.
it's more badass that like I mean in the Rise of Kylo Ren, for instance, seeing him bleed that kyber crystal, or the goddamn Charles Soule Vader comic,
Oh yeah,
seeing them bleed the kyber crystal is awesome as hell.
yeah.
So
That's
I kind of like that more so than just using like lab created kyber crystals. I think that's kind of cool.
that's something that I had seen like Legends fans like kind of getting the like people like defending like the synthetic crystals versus like I think that for lore of like force users in general and Jedi versus Sith or dark side force user versus light side force user, a Sith Lord being forced to like make a living like not sentient but like a it's alive with the force, like making that thing suffer to turn a lightsaber crystal red. That is way better than synthetic crystals, in my opinion. Like I know that there's some people because like Bane, like during that time period in Legends, a lot of the Sith they would just like manufacture lightsabers for quote unquote Sith lords to use like during war or whatever. And I think that it's like a good like rite of passage type thing for a Sith Lord or for a dark side force user. I can't remember the name of the Jedi that Vader like goes and hunts down to like take his
Oh shit!
lightsaber.
It'll
I
come to me.
I
Which
just bought his that issue with his first appearance in there, that character, and it's like a really dope like test that Palpatine like throws
yeah. Oh
Vader
my god, this
through.
is gonna kill me. I can't remember that character's name, but yeah, I love that because it's basically like if you want to be a Sith, you got to kill a Jedi and you got to take their lightsaber and bleed their kyber crystal.
And that was like the cool part about even Ben was like Ben Solo in like the Rise of Kylo Ren run is like he's obviously not like a totally evil person. So like him bleeding his crystal and like it being like I always read that section of that comic book being that his him bleeding that crystal doesn't happen all the way, and that's the reason why his lightsaber's like obviously like all fucked up and staticky and like erratic is because he's not really putting his whole heart into turning that crystal or whatever. That's how I interpreted it. Is like that crystal's still
Oh
kind of
man,
clinging to like the Ben Solo side
yeah, I'm trying
of
to
Kylo
remember.
Ren.
It's been because yeah, it's been like 2 years since I've read that story. I could have. I wonder. I couldn't remember if it was like if he damaged it when he was bleeding it. I honestly don't even recall.
Like the final like panels in that comic is like him bleeding, like with the rest of the knights around him, and he's like turning the crystal red or whatever. But like when he first ignites the lightsaber, obviously it's like the one that we've seen that we know and love is like the really staticky lightsaber. Like it's not like a solid blade like Vader's,
Yeah,
obviously. And then Austin says, "Isn't Kirik Infalia?" That is right. That is
Infala. Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember like
With
the name of the vow that he took. Like
the
that it's like
Barrage bow.
yeah, that like he like can't be like involved in any Jedi affairs.
Which dude, that character was pretty badass
I
too.
mean, for basically being in one like comic book realistically, like it's like one or two, like that's like a pretty like solid backstory for that character.
Seriously,
And
that
and I
man,
love
that
that Vader had to like go and like try to fight because he like knew he's like okay, I know that some Jedi did this, so I'm gonna go like search through
yep.
the Jedi archives to try and find it.
And I love too that oh my god, that Charles Soule comic is
So good.
incredible. Like one of the best Star Wars stories. But I love too, like he kind of almost gets the best of Vader, but it's the way that Vader beats him is basically by using like civilians around him.
Total
And
Vader move.
yeah, so awesome. And then does he like use the Force to like destroy a dam or something? It's just that story is absolutely
I love
incredible.
like in that comic book, he like had grabbed a lightsaber from like a treasure vault, killed a bunch of stormtroopers with it, and then just left that lightsaber behind purposely to
Yep.
still go and get that other dude's lightsaber.
Yep.
Like that is commitment. Like Palpatine probably wouldn't have known
I'm
realistically, you know.
And then I'm right before because it's a Jedi outpost that they go to. He goes to, and I think like he could have just sent them the security code to land, but he's like the droid asked him for the security code, and he's like, I'm not doing that. I think he starts attacking the temple or the outpost or something like that.
He's just
Just
like
so,
down to die at that point. He's
yeah,
like,
just
if
so
I die,
awesome.
I
He's just
die.
ready to mess shit up. It's so good.
It's like I would even love to get like a Vader like vision story. Like I'm not sure like how familiar you are with like Star Wars Infinities, but it's like the What If series back when Dark Horse had the license or whatever. And there's it's in the Return of the Jedi one that this is like sort of lame, but like light side Vader it has like a completely like white suit, which I'm like that's pretty dumb. But it would be like pretty interesting to see like a Star Wars Visions, like a Star Wars What If, where what if Vader gets turned earlier? Like what if when he first meets Luke, Luke is able to convince him to like go back to being a Jedi and he for all of episode 6 is like helping Luke actively. Like what would because he wouldn't be Darth Vader anymore. So like what would Anakin Skywalker look like? What would he
Yeah,
be like? That's like the interesting shit that I think that they would be able to like to dive into.
yeah, 100. And I think Visions absolutely allows for that to happen. And again, I talked about What If in my video where I did the review of the season, and I think the success of What If and now the success of Visions 100% opens the door for Lucasfilm to start doing that more because I mean those are stories that people want to want to dive into. I mean, go to YouTube, you see a ton of videos about what would have happened to such and such character if this happened instead of what actually happened in canon.
That's like honestly one of the biggest drivers of the Star Wars fandom, like the last like 3 or 4 years, is like these what if Ahsoka was able to do this, or what if Anakin did this, yeah, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So like if they just like feeding into that, like I feel like they could even just like go to some of these Star Wars YouTubers and take their like exact scenarios and like make them into Visions episodes.
I think that that would be really cool to see Star Wars taking that like what if approach. It'd be super fun. And
I
then
still
and
haven't
if
like
it's not
watched
canon,
all of the what if Marvel like
uh,
what if.
I didn't watch last week's just because I've been riding high on Visions, man.
Oh yeah.
I've watched those episodes multiple times, so I still got to watch last week's. But it's been super fun. It's been really, really good.
I watched the one where Hank Pym kills like the Avengers or whatever. I saw
Yeah.
that one. I saw the zombie one, but I was actually just talking to my fiance about this the other day. I was like, I like Marvel and I like all the stuff they've done. Like, but I would have been totally cool if like the Marvel universe had ended right after Endgame.
Yeah, I'm definitely into Marvel.
Hmm.
And it's funny because like I never get super excited whenever a show or a movie's announced, but when I watch it, then I'm like, this is awesome as hell. So the only times I've been disappointed with Marvel stuff, I feel like some of the Phase One movies weren't that great, but
Yeah.
everything pretty much after that has been fantastic. So even though I don't get super excited about them when I watch whatever show or movie, I'm usually not disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about this like last time we spoke. Was really into the Loki show. Like
Oh,
WandaVision didn't
so
really
good.
like do a ton for me. So
Same.
apparently I didn't realize that uh Falcon and Winter Soldier, I didn't realize that like they basically had to rewrite that entire show because a apparently we're not supposed to say the C word, the virus stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yep. And I had no clue about that until I watched a video the YouTuber New Rock Stars did, basically showing like more a proof of the story change for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And
and talk about
after I
bad
watched
timing.
that, yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, it is extremely obvious that they redid the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, that had to be like such a just imagine like being those producers like watching like what's happening like in China like a year ago. They're like,
Yeah.
shit. Like
Yeah,
seeing like it
we got
unfold
to
in
get
front of
our
their
ass in
eyes.
gear.
Yeah. Gotta get back to the writing table. Like that's like worst case scenario for any like as like a video producer and like somebody who like edits and stuff like that. Even like going back to like rewrite like a section of like copy is like it's like seriously it's like jumping into a pool, getting out of the pool, drying off, getting ready to go home, and then someone pushes you back into the pool. And you have to come back out and wait another
Oh
hour
my god,
before you
for
get back in
sure,
your
man.
car. It's like
I
worst
feel like
case
that's gotta
scenario.
be such a pain in the ass and such like, God damn it, we gotta do this again.
Now imagine gathering up all of those actors and like Disney having to like rewrite the entire thing. Brutal.
Now, because I know with Solo, Disney and Lucasfilm, they shit canned and I can't even remember who it was, the previous people that
It's a dude
were
who did I keep want to say Community, but that's not it.
I can't remember, but like I don't know how you feel about Solo, but I thought Solo was really good, and I thought Ron Howard did an excellent job.
It's the one that
Um,
it's the Star Wars movie I've definitely seen the least. I mean, I wasn't like I didn't leave it like being like, oh my god, that's the worst thing I've ever watched. But like I definitely wasn't in love with it. Um, but I mean, it's not bad. I would watch
yeah,
the second one.
and then I think the same with Rogue One. I think they had to do a bunch of reshoots as well. I don't know how much of that story
I think
though
it was like
redo.
the final act of Rogue One that they had changed a bunch of stuff with. God, what was it?
Because
Gareth
I remember,
Edwards. He
yeah,
directed
yes,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Because I remember, like in the trailer, they showed some scenes of Cassian like running in the water that of the beach that they're on,
Mhm.
which did not make it to the final version of the movie. So yeah, I have to. Oh my god, it's got to suck so much to go back, and then the amount of money too.
Oh yeah.
I think that's why Solo I don't know the exact numbers, but didn't do anywhere near as well as Lucasfilm
Well, I mean,
wanted
like
because
I don't think they even had like a trailer out for it. Like, so like it took them a while to get a trailer produced and out, so that like it was like so late in like in the game. Like Solo was like already about to come out. They basically didn't really have any marketing material for it. There wasn't a big marketing push. There wasn't a big there you know they didn't have the chances to like go around and do like the circuits or whatever and to go around and interview like on late night talk shows or whatever. Like they didn't really have that chance. So
Mhm.
that movie was kind of doomed from the beginning. Phil
Yeah.
Lord and Chris Miller, that's who directed that.
Yes, yes. I think
I remember that off the dome. Everyone should be
yep.
impressed.
I I I think Lucasfilm, like, early on, they uh, they just wanted to get as much money back as they could from
Yeah.
purchasing Star Wars from George Lucas, so they were just trying to pump out Star Wars stuff as quickly as possible, and that certain movies definitely you get that feel um, when they came out. But I will say though, for the most part, I'm pretty much have enjoyed all the movies since
So
Disney's.
with Rogue One, this is like a question I always ask people. Do you Are you in the camp that thinks that Vader shouldn't have been in the movie at all until that final scene?
Oh, dude, his scene in the back to in his castle is awesome as hell. I can't believe people didn't think that I had
There's
no
a weird
clue
amount of
there.
people who didn't want him to be in the movie at all
What?
until that final section.
Oh, dude, that blows me away. I can't believe I had no clue that there's people that thought that. I loved Vader's inclusion, including the scene at his castle.
Like I just wish it looked more like Mustafar. Like I like however much you want to put Vader in a movie, I'm down to watch. I just wish that like Mustafar like really looks very different in Rogue One and in because it briefly appears in Episode 9,
Mhm.
but it doesn't look anything like it does in Episode 3.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like it doesn't even look like the same planet. So
So yeah, this is like I in what the hell is the name of that VR? Vader Immortal.
mhm.
There's part of that game explains why I don't want to give it away in case people want to play that game, but part of why we see Mustafar look different in episode 9 is explained in Vader Immortal. So
What's
there's like an actual reason.
is it like a very spoiler explanation for why?
I haven't played the game, so
Okay, gotcha.
I don't want to speak off base, but
I don't
I
know
part
anyone that
of it
has VR, so I don't feel like you're in the in the minority of like
so
not playing it.
so if I remember from what I've read correctly, that in that game you're playing as some sort of character. I don't know if it's a smuggler or what. But you go to Mustafar, and you're searching for something, or you wind up encountering something called the Bright Star.
Mm.
I can't remember the woman's name. There's like a character that it almost I think acts like a guide, but basically something happened hundreds, if not thousands, of years before the game takes place, where this like ruler of Mustafar did something that caused the planet to become this like hellscape. And then in the game, throughout the course of it, the character you're playing as does something to basically help heal the planet. And so that's why in Revenge, or I was going to say Revenge of the Sith, the Rise of Skywalker,
Revenge of the Skywalker.
you start to see like trees growing again, because that the planet's starting to heal itself.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess like I never knew that because like I think it was cool that when Vader's castle first shows up in Rogue One, it doesn't hit you with like the Mustafar, like it doesn't hit you with like the burn of like the location like it does in other areas of Rogue One. So when like you see Vader's castle, you have like that moment where you're like, "We've had to see Darth Vader. Is this Mustafar?" I think that's pretty cool. Um, I do wish that we had gotten more time on Mustafar in Episode 9. We talked about this last time we spoke on
Yeah.
Discord. Like I don't feel like we got enough prequel stuff in the sequel trilogy. No
Well,
Coruscant, no Mustafar really. I wanted to see that stuff.
it's not like it comes up often, at least in the subreddits that I follow, but I can tell you whenever it comes up, um, either Rise of Skywalker or Mustafar, I see people posting on Reddit that have no clue at all that Kylo Ren is on Mustafar, and I knew right away when they showed the planet.
Mhm.
But I could understand, like, if you're not reading the stories or excuse me, the books or the comics, like, you might not realize that it's Mustafar. Um, but yeah,
I mean, even it took me a minute, even when we were watching it, like when it first came out, I was like, "Is this Mustafar?" It's like, "Is that where we're at?" Like me, even like putting in, because I mean, Kylo Ren goes to Mustafar. He goes there to find the Wayfinder or whatever. I mean, even putting in Vader's castle like in the background and like seeing like him coming up to it or whatever, like having like a larger view of that and seeing it like hard on screen for a minute, I feel like just would have been like a really good callback. You know what I mean?
the novelization for the movie is I think it's actually really good. I haven't read many novelizations. Um, and that one I specifically wanted to read because I knew I had seen that there was more stuff that was talked about being put into the film that didn't want to making it, and the beginning scene with Kylo Ren on Mustafar. Just reading that part in the novelization, I felt was totally worth it. It is so awesome because there's more to that scene than what's in the film, and it's awesome in the novel. I know you and we talked about this the other night, but the character, the Eye of Webbish Bog,
Mm-hmm.
she has a pretty awesome scene with Kylo Ren, which I would have loved to have seen that
I'm
in the
still like
movie.
slightly confused by the Eye of the Webish's Bog. Like I'm kind of confused by like their backstory. Like, are they a Sith Lord? Is that like what their like deal was? Like, because I know
So
that like they're like a Sith Master of some kind.
so she basically was given the Sith Wayfinder, and this has kind of been touched on in the most recent in Greg Pak's most recent Darth Vader comic. So she was given at some point the Wayfinder by Darth Vader to basically guard. And
Mhm.
so the people that you see Kylo Ren fighting in the Rise of Skywalker, they're these like cultists, and I can't remember the name of the cult. But they help the Eye of Webishbag guard the Sith Wayfinder. That's why he's fighting them. And she's supposed to be protecting the Sith Wayfinder. And I can't remember exactly what their conversation was like from the novelization, but basically she winds up giving it to him or telling him where to find it, if I remember correctly.
I mean, that would have been like a really interesting, like weird, like little section of that film if like there was just this random giant spider
Yeah.
on a giant's head like popped out. That would have been like such a crazy visual. Like, I mean, if you're gonna go like buck wild with it, make it go buck wild. You know what I mean? Give me
And
that
there
weird
was
shit.
like props were made for the Rise of Skywalker with the Eye of Webbish Bog.
What a
So like
missed
there's you
opportunity.
yeah, you could see, if you just like Google, you could see images of the prop that was made. And I'm pretty sure the people that at Lucasfilm that were working on the Rise of Skywalker and his character were talking about potentially bringing the Eye of Webbish Bog back into other stories, and the Eye of Webbish Bog came into the Greg Pak Darth Vader, and I
Mhm.
loved that she was included in that comic because she's not a Sith master. She's just like, I don't even think she has any Force abilities. She's just like, I don't know if it's like a Sith follower or what the deal is, but yeah, she's just a badass.
And that I also want some like more. I know again episode 9. Like a lot of people like really really hated it or whatever, but I do want to know more about like those like weird Sith cultists on that planet. Like,
Yeah.
were they
Yeah.
born and raised there? Were they imported from there? Like, do they have the Force? Like, what's the deal with these guys? So like
Yeah.
maybe they can incorporate like Eye of the Webbish Bog. Like maybe they string them together like they're all part of the same cult.
And so this is like I think the beauty and also this is the beauty and also sometimes could be detrimental about Star Wars really diving into stuff in the books and the comics because in that same Greg Pak Darth Vader, Darth Vader finds the Sith Wayfinder from the Eye of Webbish Bog, and then he winds up traveling to Exegol.
Hmm.
And dude, it's so awesome. If any of you have not read that that comic
I
or
loved
that
it.
issue. Oh, it's so good because he winds up going to Exegol, and there's these bunch of like Sith cultists there. And my when I was reading it, my thought was, all right, they're trying to show that there is a bunch of people, bunch of cultists on Exegol doing the bidding of Palpatine, trying to help explain what we saw in The Rise of Skywalker. I have no clue if that's the case, but that was my thought that, all right, we're seeing all these people in this Sith temple on Exegol
And they're
to help.
torturing like that big kyber crystal to like bleed it
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yep.
God,
So yeah,
that's brutal to me. It's still brutal.
yeah.
Like bleeding a kyber crystal, still seems so brutal. And
I
I know that a lot of people were like, "Well, why didn't Vader tell Luke about Exegol?" And I'm like, I don't know, but for some reason, I'm fine with it.
it's like one of those things where it's like, damn, they didn't know at the time when they were making the movies.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's a very good question. I so to go back to Rise of Skywalker, like that movie when it hits, I feel like it hits. And I mentioned this to you the other night, like that movie when it's on, it's like home run, but when it strikes out bad. Um, I'm
that's a lot
definitely
of the
not one of
problem
those.
with a lot of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I still enjoy it. I know that some people like love it, really enjoyed it or really hated it. I still enjoyed it, but yeah, there are definitely moments I'm like, ooh, it's they could have done things a little bit different or it could have been a little bit better.
Like even like to circle back around to like Star Wars Visions, I feel like that would be a really good way to like. I feel like Star Wars Visions is going to be like a good way to just test the waters for anything in Star Wars, being like, hey, how would you feel about us bringing like Kyle Katarn or Kip Duran into some of these Vision stories, or okay, we're gonna test the waters and see what people feel about like a dark side Rey, or even this is something I've always wanted to see, a Ben Solo who was saved by Rey in Episode 8, who like turned away from the First Order or whatever.
Man, that's the one thing that kills me about the Rise of Skywalker. Like I mentioned this to you the other night as well. Like I love the moments in the Rise of Skywalker where you're seeing Kylo Ren turn back into Ben. And as Ben, what is it? I think he only says like ow when he jumps into that
Yeah,
goddamn giant
yeah.
chain. Like, come on, I want to see more of Ben Solo. This would have been awesome.
And like like seeing him have like like even if you don't like Rise of Skywalker, which a lot of people don't, there are sections of that I like. I like when Ben does the Han Solo shrug. And he's like, "All right,
Mhm.
the fight is commencing now," and like he's got the lightsaber and stuff like that. And I think that like his fighting style is super unique to like even anything because like obviously in the prequels of Star Wars, it's like all super big, giant, explosive, like acrobatic stuff. And in the original trilogy, it's like obviously for like the technology constraints, it's like much slower paced. It's much more both hands on the lightsaber or whatever. And then Ben Solo is like super floaty. It's like he's using. This is what I found so interesting about even like Luke in Episode 8 when he's quote unquote fighting Ben in like on Crate or whatever. He's just sort of floating around. Like the Force is
Yeah.
like helping him kind of like flow and kind of be weightless almost like in a sense. And it's
Yep.
not so much like these big sweeping motions, but it's more of just they're light as a feather, which
That's a great point that I never really thought about. I'm trying to think like in the prequels, do we even other than like Palpatine doing that like jump spinning thing when he attacks or Jedi Masters that go to arrest him, like do we really see anything? And I know in the beginning of the Phantom Menace, but they're kind of they're running away. They're not necessarily fighting. You see Qui-Gon and
force speed.
Obi-Wan like yeah, force freaking run.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't think we aside from the sequel trilogy, I don't think we've really gotten that. And that I absolutely love the fight scene between Kylo Ren and Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. One of my favorite duels in all of Star Wars. And part of it is exactly because of what you're saying. I love how they are using the Force to fight each other.
It's in the part that I really liked about that was we get to see a great big giant force jump again,
Yeah.
which is something that we didn't really get in episode 7 or 8. And then you see like you see Kylo Ren like burst through like the waves jumping like up and over to like start to attack Rey and stuff like that. And like I was saying, like it's not even so much that they're like in the prequels, like the Jedi feel very like superhuman. They can make like giant, great big jumps. There's like lots of flourishing lightsaber moves, but in Rise of Skywalker, Kylo's like almost like breakdancing in a way. He's like just sliding around. Like when the Knights of Ren are trying to attack him, he just kind of like lightly leaps over, and like they seem in the sequel trilogy, they seem like almost like weightless to me. Like they seem like physics have been turned off for the Jedi, because not only are they using the Force to like jump and to attack and stuff like that, but even their in between motions, like when they're just like transitioning from place to place, it seems like they're using the Force to assist them, which is like something that we didn't get in the prequels, where when they're actually just fighting each other ground to ground, hand to hand. It does seem like very, real worldy, like where they're flourishing and stuff like that. But in the sequels, they're just flowing around, which is like a definitely a different type of lightsaber duel, like that I was pretty there for. Like even the throne room scene in episode 8 feels very grounded. Like they're very stiff in their positions. They're attacking super hard. But like later on in episode 8, when Luke is fighting Kylo Ren, he's just kind of like flipping around and kind of floating.
Yeah. Dude, that's a great point that I never thought about. Because
It's
yeah, I feel like with the prequels, it's kind of like it's implied that they're
they're
say that
almost
I don't,
superhuman.
yeah, like their powers are kind of like amplified, or their fighting is amplified because of the Force. We don't necessarily see it. It's more implied. Whereas you are 100% right. We definitely see that
And that
in
was
this
like
movie.
kind of what I was expecting out of like the sequel trilogy, because like episode 7 is called The Force Awakens. So I was like, I don't know if you ever played the game Force Unleashed, but it's just Force powers dialed up to 12. So I was like
That,
expecting some like weird
as
shit.
crazy as this sounds, I never that for whatever reason that game when I was younger didn't interest me for whatever reason. That's one of the Star Wars games I have not played.
People definitely look back on it with rose tinted glasses. I mean, it's like fun to throw around people or whatever, but like the story of it, I found to be very lacking. Like it's Vader's Secret Apprentice or whatever. And like we need to do a whole episode purely devoted to the fact that you got into the expanding universe through Disney.
Yeah, yeah.
That
I
is still fascinating to me.
Yeah, man. I that's why like it bums me out when there are people that are like, "Oh, I'm not gonna read Legend stuff because it's not canon," and vice versa. Like, I'm not gonna read canon stuff because it's not Legends. There's there's awesome stories in both Legends and canon. I was
Yeah,
saying before that the Bane Path of Destruction is It is so
so good.
goddamn good. It's phenomenal. I
So
forgot.
good.
I forgot to tell you. I have them on my bookshelf.
Hell yeah.
When I was in college, I read the Clone Wars run, which was
Oh
awesome.
damn.
So I was mistaken. I hadn't even thought about that, but I was reading that Clone Wars run back in the day, and it was awesome.
That should be like a section of the podcast that we do where we can I'll have you like start to read like issue by issue, like an expanding universe, like comic book run or something like that, and see how you gauge it next to some of the Disney canon stuff.
It's interesting, man. Like I feel like Bane, Plagueis, like all of them hold up very well. And the way I look at those stories, I'm like, I look at them as it's part of, at least in my head canon. Like I look at them as being a part of canon, even though they're not technically canon.
Plagueis
Like
and Bane could definitely slide right in.
yeah, like
No
there's you,
problem.
especially because what we've got on those characters in canon so far basically like validates what was in those stories. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I still
so
like
this is
have
all
gotten no explanation for how Yoda knew there were only two Sith at a time. I still don't know what the explanation for that is, because like how would he know that? Because like in the Bane trilogy, they work so hard to make sure that they think all Sith are dead. They think they're extinct. So when Yoda says that in episode 1, I'm like, how would you know that though?
that's a really good point, man.
I'm sure there's some
I never
explanation
thought about
somewhere.
that before you mentioned it, because I mean he mentions that too in season 6, the finale, or not the
Because like he
finale,
goes
but that
maybe
final
that
arc.
because he goes and meets
That
Bane
like
on
Bane's
Morrowind, quote unquote.
essence. Yeah. And he says to Bane, like, "You're the creator of the rule of two." That's a good point, man.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you know that though?
How would they know that if the Sith are supposed to be extinct and they've been hiding in the shadows, right? How the hell would they know that there's a rule of two?
Also, when does Yoda become like an adult? Because Baby Yoda, Grogu he's 50 years old. He's still a baby. So it's like, what's their age scale? You know what I mean? Like, when does
And
Grogu become a teenager?
dude, to make things even more ridiculous, the High Republic novel Out of the Shadows, Yaddle is in it, and she does not speak like Yoda. She speaks like a
So
regular
he
person.
literally does just have a speech impediment.
So it's I'm such Yoda has been my favorite character ever since I was a little kid. So I want to know everything that we possibly can about Yoda. I would love to know more about their species and like, yeah, why the hell does he speak like a weirdo? But that's part of his charm is he speaks like a
That he
goddamn
speaks like
weirdo.
a weird little toad man.
Yeah.
I wonder, it would be hilarious to me if like we eventually find out that that's purely by choice. He just speaks like that
Imagine.
just because.
Just like because I know one of the things that's been talked about is like he purposely tries to fool people into thinking he's this like feeble being, which is
Oh,
why
that's his
he
whole thing
walks
with
around.
Luke on Dagobah. He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
right.
I'm just
So
old,
like
this old toad man hanging out in the swamp."
maybe part of his ploy or to trick people into not realizing he's the strong Jedi Master is I'm going to talk like a goddamn fool. This way people won't take me seriously.
I'm really. It would be very interesting to me to see like where Grogu goes in the future, because this is something we also talked about like on Discord the other day. Was I think that a lot of the problems that people had with the sequel trilogies that get hard caps canon, the
Mhm.
new Jedi Order never
Yeah.
really comes into existence. It fails.
Yeah.
So it's like, does Grogu get killed by like the stuff that happens in Rise of
Hope
Kylo
not.
Ren?
But at the
Does
same
Is
time,
he
like
like a full adult? What's going on?
imagine if Grogu was killed, like let's say
That would
closing in
really piss some people
the
off.
ending of Mandalorian. Could you imagine how like devastating that would be to see?
Oh, people would be so mad. People would be
It's
so mad.
I hate to compare Star Wars to MCU, and I've done that like multiple times. I brought up the MCU, but I feel like that's been. I wish Star Wars and Lucasfilm had the same luxury of MCU storytelling. There's it, Luke and Lucasfilm and Star Wars. You're kind of stuck by what the movies have created story wise, and then yeah, with the sequel trilogy, and I know in the Rise of Kylo Ren they do show a little bit of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order,
Mm.
but you kind of handcuff yourself a little bit with that with the sequel trilogy, and to go back to Visions. That's why I would absolutely love a continuation of the Ninth Jedi, like a story, assuming that's supposed to take place hundreds of years into the future distancing from the story from the sequel trilogy, going hundreds of years into the future. There's a bunch of Sith. Hopefully, the Jedi Order would be building up. That would be so goddamn awesome to see.
And
Because
like,
I
I mean, even if like the sequel trilogy had been, it's set hundreds of years in the future. Even me, as a legacy stan, someone who's like in love with Star Wars Legacy, which is 127 years after Episode 4, even if they're like, this is 200 years after, Episode 4, and Luke and Leia are in it as Force Ghosts, maybe Han's in there, like as like a flashback where he pops up in a hologram, I feel like that would have pissed less people off.
yeah, I could totally see that too. And like to I was saying this to my wife the other day, like the fact that in the prequels we get this prophecy about Anakin being the one and he's going to bring balance to the force and he's going to defeat the Sith. Like to me, what I've always loved about Star Wars when I was younger, aside from Yoda, like I didn't really care about Luke, Leia, Han, any of those characters. It was just I loved Jedi. The Sith are awesome and lightsabers. So to not have stories with Sith and Jedi, like man, I don't. That's I
Yeah,
wanna
I would rather.
see Jedi, and so, like, with that goddamn prophecy, like, you're kinda handcuffed, and I feel like Lucasfilm has tried to, wiggle their way out of that with
Mhm.
because I know in The Rise of Skywalker, Anakin tells, Rey, "Bring back balance to the Force like I did." And in the Master and Apprentice novel, there's a bunch of talk about like prophecies in that novel and how they could be hard to determine to read and hard to determine. So I feel like that has completely handcuffed Lucasfilm.
Yeah, it's because like the Knights of Ren, like they weren't really Sith. They were just like kind of dark side users or whatever. Um, I'm personally of the opinion that I always want to see different eras in Star Wars where Sith are fighting Jedi. We already have like the rule of two, like Bainite, super secret Sith fighting like a shadow war. Give me like legions of Sith
Seriously, man.
fighting legions of Jedi. That's what I want to see.
I would love that, dude, because that's the stuff I want to see in Star Wars, man. When those what was it? I can't remember exactly when it was. When Lucasfilm announced all those new shows that were going to be coming out, and then
Hmm.
Rogue Squadron. The one project I was most excited for was the Acolyte because
Same.
it's most likely going to be about the Sith. At least that's what I think. And that was when, like, yeah, I want stories with the Sith, man. I want to know about the Sith.
I'm still sort of I know that it's supposed to take place like during the High Republic, but I'm still kind of hoping for it to be the story of Bane and Darth Zana. I'm holding that hope for that. Like that's I would love to see like
Dude, that'd be
a
so
Bane
awesome.
training Xana over the course of like 3 seasons of a TV show.
My God, dude, the ending of that trilogy
So
is
good.
fantastic. So
So
freaking good.
good.
And Darth Zana is awesome as hell.
Like she is like probably one of my all-time favorite characters. And I feel like a lot of people kind of like pass over her for like other like more well-known Sith Lords like Lumaya. She gets a lot of attention or whatever, but Darth Zana, one of my favorites, and her apprentice, Darth Cognis. I don't know if you remember like her in the
Yep.
like
Yep.
that I still would have wanted a continuation of Darth Cognis because like there's some like
So good.
that period between like Dark Horse like really fleshing out the expanded universe with comic books and stuff like that. There was like this weird era where like Bantam Books was like in control of like the books and stuff like that. So like the lore was sort of like it's a way different it felt different than how it feels like in Dark Horse era or even in the Marvel era or whatever. So like there's some like weird shit they tied into Darth Cognis being like the Sith master of like some weird Force users like down the road and stuff like that. I am down for Star Wars to get weird as shit, and like I feel
Oh yeah.
like Visions is like such a good way to get weird again. Like the I didn't personally care like a ton for like the twins episode or whatever, but I feel like that episode was just weird as shit. They're fighting out in open space. There's like a giant rainbow colored lightsaber crystal or whatever. It's like give me like that. The Jedi are inherently weird, so like why not give me some of that weird shit?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And like I so the twins was one of the episodes too where I was like, I don't know how much I like this one. I enjoy it, but I don't think it's my favorite. And then I watched the behind the scenes. I'm like, man, now I like it even more now because the creator of that one was basically like, I wanted to get weird. I wanted to basically pay homage to these characters into this story, but I want to make it kind of over the top. So that over the topness was done on purpose. And now that I know that, I'm like, oh my God, it makes that episode so much better. And I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like it makes it hit more.
Oh yeah. So to bring it back around to wrap it up, so this will be a bit of a broad question, but what are your hopes for season two? Like I know we've talked about bringing back some of these other stories and stuff like that, but what's like an area that you want to see Star Wars Vision season two kind of dive into?
Man, that's a really good question. One of the things I would love for it to continue to be anime. If it's not, I think it would be cool if they're I also think it'd be cool if Lucasfilm's like, we're gonna have different, maybe each season do a different style of animation. That'd be kind of cool.
Mhm.
As far as stories go, oh my God, dude. I feel like any of the ones that we mentioned earlier, the Duel, the Ninth Jedi, the Elder, the Village Bride, any of those, I would love to see a continuation of. I think it would be so cool if some legend stories wound up in Visions, because I think it would be a great way to attract people who have not dived into Legends.
Mhm.
to be introduced to Legends, and then people that are ride or die Legends to be able to see some of those stories told um, in animation.
Yeah, it's like
I want
if they release them both at the same time, it's like here's this Legends storyline. By the way, we also reprinted the book with a new cover. Here you go.
I would love to see, just like you were saying, I would love to see more. We're gonna tell a story where there is a ton of Sith and a bunch of Jedi. Like I think it'd be so cool to have like an old Republic type story where there's a ton of Sith roaming the galaxy and a super large Jedi Order as well. Like that'd be awesome. That'd be so goddamn cool.
I would be 100% there for it. I mean, similar situation for like my hopes for season 2 is I definitely like want to see Legions of Sith versus like the Jedi like at their peak, which would in canon be, during the High Republic or whatever. I would want to see more weird Force shit, and maybe I would even want to see something that's like completely removed from Jedi and Sith, like in the Force in general, like a weird bounty hunter story or a smuggler story. Like Star Wars is like a spaghetti western in space. So like maybe
Mhm.
getting like a more western style story that's just completely separate from any Force user stuff. It's like
That'd be cool.
like a Boba Fett story or like a Jango Fett story like during like the prequel era or something like that. Because there are like a lot of fans of like Star Wars who are just into Mandalorians or bounty hunters or smugglers or like kind of like the more criminal element of Star Wars. I would definitely be down for anything involving that as well.
Yeah. The other thing too, more weird lightsabers. Like I love the
Oh
Sith
yeah.
Band leader's lightsaber. So goddamn awesome. More weird lightsabers for sure.
Yeah, more weird lightsabers, more spaghetti westerns, Legions of Sith, Legion of Jedi.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're prepped to. I think we're prepped to send out that email to Lucasfilm now.
Yeah. Give me a bunch of Sith, give me a bunch of Jedi, give me some weird lightsabers.
Yeah, 100%. So with that, I think we could probably wrap it up. I think that we could talk Star Wars in perpetuity for the rest of time until the
Oh
sun
my
goes
god,
out.
seriously.
But for anyone who's watching this VOD, make sure you go check out Dan on Star Wars Transmissions, and I'll be editing together this podcast. I will be streaming it and film and like recording it all at the same time. So I'll cut together this, and you can check that out on either my channel or if Dan wants to on his channel. And till then, we will see you guys next time in the basement.
And thank you so much, Brian, for bringing me on. This was a ton of fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna have more Star Wars conversations in the
Oh
future.
yeah, man.
All right, later, everyone.
Take care.